It's a long train journey to get to Horizon from Malwood, but then only a short taxi ride from the train station. Her possessions, the expensive Manor Park clothes that were quickly getting worn out in Malwood, some books, a few photographs, are in a single trunk. It's hard to get the trunk into the taxi, and the driver doesn't help her. Outside Horizon there are lines of big cars, show floats of wealth, delivering students to the school. She's the only one arriving in a dirty taxi, and the buildings don't look like they did in the pictures. Instead they look like pieces of a broken mirror stuck into a slime of green mud. She instantly realizes her father had been absolutely and completely and incredibly wrong about the Horizon Academy being for the future leaders of the Universal Alliance. What she sees is a dumping ground for the children of those wealthy politicians and industrial aristocrats who think the world more interesting and important than family, or parents who are too ill for their families or are just plain dead. She takes stock. She's the new girl there, no friends. The other students have been there years and have already formed their friendships. No way to fix that, she thinks. Just try to fit in. Then, she's a scholarship girl. Not a point of pride here, not anymore. Not like with her father. Not something she's going to advertise. All it means is you have no money. Uncle Simon has no money. Matthew has no money. She has no money. No way to fix all of those. She just hopes nobody will find out. She's pretty, though. She says this to the machine as if she's describing someone else, a person strangely denied the ability to change their appearance. Mouth, nose, and eyes in well-ordered arrangement, properly geometric. Even teeth, too. Never required a moment of engineering. But narrow eyes and a mouth a bit too straight, making her look unfriendly, cold. She has her light brown hair, almost blonde, swept across her forehead to soften that. It makes her look like a waif, and the fashion is to look like a waif. The irony isn't lost on her, she explains. While there are rich girls who try to look like waifs, she's a waif who looks like a waif. No way to fix pretty, and if she wants to fit in, she thinks, pretty is a problem. It's the theory of pretty. 1. Pretty is nice. That's all. It isn't good for anything. 2. Pretty makes you a target. 3. Don't be a nice target. Friendless, no money, and pretty. That's her summary. But she's no pessimist, though, she tells the machine. She's just a realist. The first afternoon there is simply a bad joke. A girl who styles herself Weasel shows her around. This girl, Weasel, has applied the latest designs to her black clothes, the most expensive tattoos that she'll wash off and replace the next day with different designs. And that tells her something. Weasel has money. But Weasel can't look like a waif. It doesn't work. She can't pull it off. The hair's too long, and the teeth are manufactured. Weasel seems annoyed at having to show her around and describes everything in a bored nasal voice. She isn't interested in where Columbia's from, her name, anything. Weasel takes her through the girls' dorm rooms in a block of concrete and glass. 36 dorm rooms on 3 floors, 6 girls to each. The boys' dorms are in another building on the other side of the school. In her dorm, 5 of the 6 beds are occupied by girls who show no interest in her. Her bed is the 6th. Then the recreation room, then across some playing fields, then the swimming pool, then the refectory, an oddly named place smelling of old, cold food. Finally her new classroom. The walls are covered in whiteboards, floor to ceiling, row after row of desks. Weasel sits at one of the desks, flicks on the embedded screen and taps it twice, studies something closely. "What's your name?" Weasel says. Columbia tells her, and after Weasel looks at the screen, she points to a desk near the window. "We sit by alphabetical order, so that'll be your desk." then you'll be sitting behind Castle Rose. Weasel gives her this look, like she's looking at her for the first time and not liking what she sees. You keep away from him. She says okay after a pause. During that pause, she considers what she really wants to say. She's never liked people telling her what she can't do, and she doesn't care about Castle Rose, whoever he is. Then Weasel says, "You just keep away from him, sicky sweet." Sicky sweet, so there it is, the theory of Pretty getting her noticed. Then she says defiantly, "No, my name's Columbia." Weasel just stares at her. She thinks maybe Weasel didn't understand, so she elaborates. "I said my name's Columbia. Not whatever it was, not that name you called me." Weasel rises up slowly from her desk and walks over to her. She senses a raised fist, a snake about to strike. But it's just a threat. Weasel suddenly turns and leaves with the words, "Suit yourself." But she knows this isn't over. She goes back to her dorm alone, unpacks, lies on her bed. The way she puts it to herself, lying there on that first night, all things logically considered, her life is conclusively just one dismal thing after another. And now there are all these questions in her mind. So what now? Accept that stupid nickname? Fit in? Hide? Get another nickname? Do well? Do badly? Oh God, then at what? And there's this nauseating feeling gnawing at her heart that there may not be any answers here after all. Of course, the nickname Sicky Sweet sticks. All the girls call her that. Then they shorten it to Sicky. Then it becomes straight Sicky, after she angrily tells some girl named Anvil, who called her that, to go straight to hell. She gets a black eye for that, a sharp punch out of the blue that knocks her to the ground. All by the end of her first week there. Then there's Benedict Castle-Rose, another problem. Sure, he's a good-looking sort of a boy, tall, thin, though his mouth turns down a little at the corners, like he's disappointed at the world for no good reason. He has these brown eyes that seem to look off at something remote, like he's permanently distracted. His eyes have this elsewareness to them, like he might somehow be thinking about his own theory of elsewareness. She figures he's a slow learner. There are plenty enough of those at Horizon. He doesn't talk to anyone. He's in a bubble by himself. Lazy, too, she can tell. When she's working hard, she can tell he isn't. From his desk in front of hers, there's no busy whisk of a stylus on a screen, rarely even the crackle of a turning page. Often he just stares out of the window, and she imagines him slowly doodling a daydream. In a history lesson one day, she looks over his shoulder and sees he's drawn this picture of a face on a scrap of paper, a kindergarten picture that could have been fashioned by a talented 3-year-old. But the girls all talk about him, how he's the richest boy at the school, how his father owns mines and newspapers and skyscrapers, a small airline. At least it explains Weasel's warning to stay away from him. He has a better life there, too. While she and the other students have to run each morning before breakfast, 2 laps around the school's perimeter, slipping in the slime mud that's everywhere, Castle Rose is never there. He has his own room, doesn't have to share a dorm. She hears about the packages of food he receives every week. She's petrified that one day he might decide to talk to her. She's pretty, after all, and there isn't a single thing she would want to talk to him about. What if he asks her where she lives? Malwood, for pity's sake. Then maybe what her father does. Oh, the revelation of the gas heater, 2 parents in a coma, and an uncle with a filthy house and a repulsive white van. She describes for the machine an awful conversation with Castle Rose that she had imagined for herself in bed one night. "Look, understand, I don't own horses or dogs. I don't live in a beautiful house. We don't have a driver. We don't have a helicopter. We don't have guns, holiday homes, workers, antiques, Persian rugs, art. We don't have anything. The way she tells it to the machine, she makes it sound like she would have been proud and resilient, but instead I imagine her crying in her misery. Either way, it's a wretched picture. Poverty makes people proud, I believe, simply so they don't have to have conversations like that. Then suddenly she's sobbing at the machine. I just wanted to belong. I was right, crying and pleading for acceptance. She takes a minute to recover, to stop crying. Then she continues. It works out fine for her in Castle Rose. She doesn't want to talk to him, so she doesn't. And he doesn't want to talk to her, so he doesn't. It isn't the theory of pretty that's wrong. It's just that he doesn't talk to anyone. He probably doesn't even know her real name, she thinks. Maybe not even her nickname. Then there's Dingo, the one girl in her class who insists on calling her by her real name, only quietly when nobody else can hear. It's this girl's quiet war against the nicknames, a rebellion of sorts, only wrapped in fear. Dingo is this girl's nickname, of course. She's a short Australian girl with a wild animal quality that strangely suits her. Dingo's always there when someone's getting beaten up, but always far enough away to run, and ready to run fast. Watching, waiting for a carcass on the floor, a story to tell. Dingo watches everything. Everyone hates Dingo. She hates Dingo too. She would rather stand up to whatever's thrown at her and take another punch. And she already has that one time. Not like Dingo. She imagines hitting Dingo repeatedly, beating her up, and doing it all right in front of Weasel. And doing it in front of Weasel's friends. Girls with nicknames like Bong, Legs, Magnet, Anvil. Yes, the same Anvil who punched her before. Bong, who smokes cigarettes as publicly as she can get away with. She reeks of the sick smell. Legs, who looks scared all the time, and is all the more unpredictable and frightening for it. Magnet, who's an undersized girl with pockets of jailbreak electronics. Anvil, who's simply crazed. Since that warning from Weasel, she hasn't crossed Weasel, hasn't crossed Anvil. She keeps quiet and keeps her distance. But she knows there's a price that will be paid eventually for that tiny rebellion on the first day. And there's Dingo watching her, watching Weasel, watching Castle Rose, waiting for Columbia to pay the price.